And I wanted to talk today, we do a lot of work with the United Nations, particularly with the Global Compact and the Principles for Responsible Management Education. And I'll tell you a little bit about I've completely failed to do an immodest introduction to myself. I've worked in publishing for many years, and before that in consulting and education, and was very interested to hear the discussions this morning about benchmarking and about team working and looking at process-based education rather than content-based, which I think is very interesting. And I have mostly worked for small organisations or for myself. So again, I was very interested to hear the presentation about innovation, and I think that's a very valuable and valid discussion to be having today. I wanted to talk to you really about a little bit about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. You will see on the table in front of my co-presenter some of our a leaflet that we've done about the UN SDGs, and you're very welcome to take one of those away and take a look. I'm an unashamed fan of the United Nations. I think the UN is an extraordinary organisation. It was founded for the very best reasons following two horrible global wars in the middle part of the 20th century, to really try and promote world peace and understanding and try to bring nations together to stop, to transcend some of their individual concerns and look at how we can make a better world collectively. And I was very pleased and flattered to be invited to come and talk to you today, because I think the challenge that we have to make a more sustainable world and a more responsible world is one that transcends individuals and individual organisations. And I think this is why an organisation like WASD is such a powerful one, such an important one, because it gives us a chance. I know we're all going to go back on Monday morning and get on with our day jobs and worry about our own issues and our own performance measures and our own concerns, but it gives us a chance occasionally to step out of that and say, how do we address and think about these things collectively? And I think the problems that face us today are too big for any of us, individuals or organizations, to address and solve apart. We need to think about addressing and solving them together. And it's forums like this and the work that ALAM and WASD have done that are, I think, an important part of helping to do that. So the work for me that the UN do is one of those bodies where people and organizations and indeed countries try and come together and transcend some of these things. So I hope some, at least, of you have come across the UN Global Goals for Sustainable Development, the Sustainable Development Goals. There are 17 of them. And as I say, if you want to, there's our little brochure tells you a little bit about those. They came together from a UN meeting in 2015, really following the Millennium Development Goals, which were developed 2000 to 2015. And the Millennium Development Goals, I think, were criticized quite a lot for being, they were sort of aspirational, but they didn't really have clear targets. And I remember speaking to Georg Kell, the director of the Global Compact in New York in 2014, when they were looking to try to put together the next phase, what they called the post-2015 agenda, and talking about trying to get something a little more clearer and a little more measurable. And so the idea was really to look at an agenda for people, planet, prosperity, and peace worldwide, And it's a long-term target. It's a 15-year program. And it has 17 goals and 169 individual targets. And that looks like quite a lot and quite a daunting task. So I want us to think today a little bit about, okay, what might we do with those? What might those look like? And I think, I hope, and let me state this rather than ask it, I think we've moved from saying, why do we need to do this, to how do we do this? I doubt there are many places, organisationally, many educational institutions, many governments, many people who would say, we actually don't need to address sustainability issues. We don't need to address resource and responsibility issues. We don't need to think about how we develop sustainably. It's not why anymore, it's how. And I wanted to quote you something from, I think, the world's most influential and wide-reaching business school accreditation body, the AACSB. We've known and enjoyed our relationships with AACSB for many years. And AACSB have always been very solidly an audit organisation. They say, tell us what you do, and we will check if you actually do that. And they've resisted, as did their counterparts, EFMD in Brussels, they've resisted the idea of building in responsibility and sustainability into their accreditation structures. Here's what the January 2016 amendment to AACSB said. Business environment is undergoing profound changes. At the same time, society is increasingly demanding that companies become more accountable for their actions, exhibit a greater sense of social responsibility, and embrace more sustainable practices. What business needs today is much different from what it needed yesterday or will need tomorrow. The same factors impacting business are also changing higher education. Business schools must respond to the business world's changing needs by providing relevant knowledge and skills to the communities they serve. This is now part of the business school accreditation structures, folks. So any of you in AACSB accredited signatory organisations need to address this stuff. And there are some very important movements like the UN Principles Responsible for Management Education, PRME, which is a voluntary signatory body. AACSB is a voluntary accreditation body, but most university presidents and principals and directors and deans will be bitterly disappointed if their institutions lost AACSB accreditation. This is no longer, should we do it? It's now, okay, we need to do it. And I think that's an important move, because once it moves from, once we start thinking about, once we get into compliance, then we start deploying resources to address these issues. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do amongst this. We worked very closely with UN bodies, and we published actually the very first title on the UN Global Compact. This one back in 2004 called Learning to Talk. We published the original inspirational guide for the implementation of Prime in 2012, which we did for the Rio +20 conference, the UN conference in Rio de Janeiro in 2012, which I was lucky enough to be at, which was very, very interesting, and was kind of the genesis for the discussions around the new SDGs. And I put up there another important collaboration that we do, which again is the work that we're doing with one of the books we're doing with WASD, From Oil to Knowledge. So what do we do as publishers? I've enjoyed my life in and around the publishing industry. And I enjoyed my life in and around consulting and education as well. Here's why I like publishing. You reach a lot of people. You can, publishers, as I've put here, solicit and collect and organize and disseminate and archive and make permanent. And in doing that, with our little, it's something I say to my little team at the office sometimes, we reach a lot of people, and it's very rare that you can have an organization our size when you can say, we have literally thousands, hundreds of thousands of people reading the material that you guys are producing. So we reach out, particularly through the deployment of online technologies, to an awful lot of people. And it makes our responsibilities quite heavy. It means that we need to think very seriously about how we solicit and how we collect and how we organize. And it was something I wanted to do when I put together the organization behind Greenleaf back in 2011, was actually to use some of my experience in publishing and focus this around this area of sustainability and sustainable development. Why? Because it's important. It's a very, very important thing that we're doing here. So I think it's interesting to look at how, and I guess for you I know a lot of you are in education and research, it's important to think about how you can be working with publishers and how we can use what publishers do to solicit and collect and organize and disseminate and sort of spread the word around this stuff. Let me talk a little bit about some of the, just as an example, around the Sustainable Development Goals. So SDG number 1 is to end poverty in all its forms everywhere. What we did with the UN Global Compact when they put the SDGs together was we interrogated our own collections and said, okay, what do we have in our online collections which kind of support some of the work that that the SDGs are trying to promote. So we look at, in terms of the goal to end poverty in all its forms everywhere, our larger online collection, the Sustainable Organisation Library, has more than 600 results on this. Social responsive organisations and the challenge of poverty, which is one of the series of titles we publish with the PRME. The Base of the Pyramid 3.0, which was a title we did with Stuart Hart from wherever Stuart's from, Vermont, I think. And then some of the work that we do with some of our partners. So Business Solutions to Poverty with Barrett Kohler in California, and Microinsurance Compendium that we do with the International Labour Organization, which is another UN body. So looking at how our collections reflect some of the work that's some of the goals in the SDGs. And again, just as another example, ending hunger, achieving food security, improving nutrition, promoting sustainable agriculture. And again, we draw from our own material and partner material, including the WASD, Knowledge Management and Sustainable Development, our own title on Changing the Food Game, and some collaborations we do with Oxfam. So this is why I think, and you can look in the material that I've brought along today. You can see how some of our collections reflect these areas, but we're not the only people who are dealing in these areas, of course. And I think, again, in organisations, both educational and practice, it's important to just take a look at the resources around you and how we can address these things. And Let me say a little bit about why I think these are important. Why I've called this a global focus for research and practice, and something which I believe will drive the sustainability research agenda. The SDGs are a credible structure. The UN is seen as non-partisan, as something which spans individual national interest. It is genuinely transnational. So I think that lends a credibility to the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's something which they are becoming, they're becoming, pretty well known. Again, at one of the, it was the EFMD Dean's Conference in Budapest earlier this year, and there were a number of people saying these are going to be driving our agendas in the world's business schools going forwards. They have measurable targets. If you, as a sort of old adage, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it easily. And that was one of the issues with the Millennium Development Goals. They weren't that easy to measure and to see if you were on the track. The Sustainable Development Goals mostly have measurable targets. They can be applied to all contexts and all nations. They're not just developing world. And again, that was something that I think the MDGs were seen as very much a sort of developing world aspiration. The Sustainable Development Goals for sustainable growth can be pretty well applied across context. They're closely linked to the three of the most important UN bodies. The one representing business, which is the Global Compact, which has about 12,000 members worldwide, about 8,000 businesses, and the remainder being educational institutions, NGOs, etc. The PRME, Principles for Responsible Management Education, has about 700 university signatories worldwide now, again transnational. And the PRI, the Principles for Responsible Investment, PRI has about 1,000 signatories across financial services. And to give some indication of how much muscle they have, one of the people involved with the PRA told me that their member organizations have something more than $30 trillion of assets under management. So these are organizations who have pledged to take investment responsibly and seriously. So the SDGs are very closely tied into the business of business and the business of the real world organizations, management and business education and investment. And they're going to shape, they are long term, so I believe that they will shape policy and investment and development for years ahead. So I think that does make them a credible focus for both research and practice. Now, as we said, we will be returning to organisations after being in Canary Wharf and think about, okay, well, what are the urgent challenges which might drive out some of the important challenges? But I'd like to sort of leave you with some thoughts about what might we do next with all these things. I was having a conversation yesterday with one of the representatives from an organisation called ASHE, the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education in somewhere in the States. And she was saying, we have so many things in our member institutions. Every day we get a new form to fill in and some new compliance issue and some new assessment. and it would be great if ASHE have a system called STARS, which is their own sort of sustainability audit. And she said, wouldn't it be great if the Sustainable Development Goals kind of joined up with our STARS assessment? And I said, yeah, I think that would be great. I think that would be a really smart idea, and I think that's really something to think about in organisations. I know higher education is one of them, where we have a lot of assessment, a lot of audit structures, and somebody coming along with a good idea and saying, hey, here's a new thing, here's a new set of forms to fill in, is something sometimes quite daunting. So I think thinking through, so this isn't just a new set of forms to fill in or something else that we might avoid. What might we do next with this challenge? What might we do, given that this really is important? And it may not be urgent, but it really is important. What might we do next? Here are some thoughts. See if you can establish this as a research agenda to encourage and promote to and provide resources for your researchers. So how do we get our researchers engaged? See if we can use this to engage students. Every survey in recent years done by the National Union of Students here in the UK, and I know the NUS quite well, they all say, there's something like 80% say, we wish our university would take sustainability more seriously. We would like to learn more. Something like 60% said, when I graduate, I would gladly work for an organisation which shares my values at a lower salary than an organisation which doesn't share my values at a higher salary. So even with the student debt that our graduates carry now, there was a majority of people saying, actually, I want to find somebody to work for that I feel shares my values. Students are engaged with this stuff. It's really important. So use it to engage your student body. Think about a specific focus. There are 17 SDGs and 169 targets. That's quite a lot to go at as an old sort of consulting and management adage of how do you go about eating an elephant, which is, you take one bite at a time. The SDGs can be an elephant, really, so how do you take one bite of those? Is there an area where you can build a real world leading expertise? There's SDG 11 is on sustainabilities and communities, SDG 16 is on peaceful and inclusive societies. There will be something in there that a university or a department will be, a university or business school will have some kind of expertise on. Maybe that's something to focus on and use that as a leverage to create something which is specialist and world leading. Find a champion, or even, better still, become a champion. Again, when things are important but not urgent, they need a champion. So how do you lead this stuff? Think about an implementation team. Get the SDGs onto your research planning agenda. Get it onto your executive team agenda. I used to work a lot in the 1990s with in quality management. It was a problem that people who were charged with implementing quality improvement and TQM in organizations always said, people don't take us seriously. If only we had more CEOs in the room. And pretty well every meeting somebody would say, you know what, make it get taken seriously, get it on your agenda, get it on your top team agenda, get it on your board agenda. This is a similar area. Once it's on a top team agenda, it gets discussed. When it gets discussed, it gets addressed. And universities are a great way, a great lever into shaping and contributing to national policy in a way that a lot of organizations really aren't. So quite often a university will have a direct line into policy making. So use the leverage there. And build something into government policy shaping and build something into to government think tanks. It's a great opportunity. It's an opportunity to use that that sort of soft power that HE has. What about organisations? What about business and professions? Number one, again, use it. This is a marketing and recruitment issue. People in organisations talk about the war for talent. How do we attract and retain the best people, the best graduates? The best people and the best graduates care pretty deeply about this stuff. So show that you're aligned to their values. They're going to be choosy about where they work. Find a working group to explore how to engage with SDGs. And again, do this with knowledge and resources. There's plenty out there, including what we do, but not just what we do. Find a number of things to do by a specific date. Again, a 2030 closing date on this seems a long way off, and 169 targets seems a lot to do. Find some things to do. Find a limited number of things to do by a specific date, then you can show some progress. Be a champion, again, lead an implementation team and get this onto your top team agenda. And number 5, scenario plan. What is this likely to mean? This is going to, as the AACSB said, business today is not the same as business yesterday and won't be the same as business tomorrow. What is this going to mean as we start to look at restrictions on reductions of food waste, trade liberalisation, removal of fossil fuel subsidies, changes in the prices of minerals, changes in extractive practices. Those will have some profound changes for your organisation, long, medium and long term. So how's that going to look? It was something that I guess came into fashion during the 1960s and 70s, was the notion of long-term scenario planning. It's not something everybody does. Everybody pretty well knows about it. It's not something every organisation, every nation, every educational institution does. But it's good practice. Think about what the changing world means. We're going to be listening to something about big data. That's something to scenario plan. That's going to change the world. So let's think about, how these things are going to change the world, because they will. And you don't want to be standing there asking what happened when it does. I think importantly, I'm saying here engage with us, but I think engage with each other. And, let's use the convening power that organisations like WASD have, that have drawn us here together from all around the world today. Let's engage with each other to solve some of these issues. We can't nail them alone. We would love to hear from you and your colleagues. We're publishers, so we publish stuff. We work as a publishing partner with WASD. We work as a publishing partner with PRME, the UN body. We are very keen. We are, I think, we're sole publisher for PRME. We have agreed with them. I signed an MOU with them about 2 weeks ago that we would gather together within reasonable limits as much as we could about this stuff. Publications make ideas tangible. So we are actively seeking publications around the Sustainable Development Goals. So please, do engage with us on that. We're very happy to look at and discuss collaborations on and around the SDGs. We're only small, but we have a big reach. We touch a lot of people and we know a lot of people. So please do talk to us, as well as talking to each other. Please do talk to us. That's where you can get a hold of me. That's the Greenleaf website. And please do take some time and follow that link, because it tells you a little bit about I mean, you've got an outline from our little brochure, but that does tell you about the SDGs, and there's a sort of wealth of information on there. They are important. I do believe they're going to shape our research agenda. So with that, let me sit down and I will hand over to my session chair. Thank you.